secure configuration posture for Palo Alto network firewalls. Making sure your Palo Alto firewall is set up securely is very important for keeping your network safe. This means using strong security settings, updating the firewall regularly, and following good practices or recommendations. So in this section, we are going to look at recommendations or best practices for secure configuration, right? So first I will start with device setup, and on the device setup, first option is ensure system logging to a remote host, and even like we will understand how we can do manual security audit, right? Not using any tool or software, no automation, it's all manual security audit, right? How you can ensure like whether remote system logging is enabled or not. Okay, because a lot of like private entities, government sectors, what they do, they hire some third party agency or company, right, to carry out security audit. Like once your Palo Alto firewall is configured, they then generally perform security audit to find out any security loophole or vulnerability, whether device hardening is in place or not, what about the software, whether current recent version of software is installed or not, best practices about security policies, configuring DNS, NTP, pre and post login banners, authentication setting, idle timeout settings, right? There are too many configuration settings, they need to be in place, right? So and once like proper security audit is done, and if there have been some like issues, then again you will be asked to fix those issues. Recently I have done one of the project in government sectors, and even I did exactly the same thing, right? So I will start with first like device setup. Under device setup section, I will start with this system logging or remote logging, then about SNMP v3 traps, SNMP version 3 traps, right, is really very important to configure. And I hope you all understand like what is SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. So SNMP protocol is used to exchange management information between network devices, and it is one of the most widely used protocol for network management, right? And there are 3 different versions: SNMP version 1, SNMP version 2C, and SNMP version 3. So SNMP version 3 supports the remote configuration of SNMP entities. It also adds encryption and authentication, right? So we will understand in this section like how we can do security audit, whether SNMP v3 traps is properly configured or not. So I will show you like how you can perform manual security audit. And as I mentioned, I said like we would not be using any tool or software or no automation. It's all manual security audit, right? And even like how to fix, that is also we are going to understand. So from where we can configure SNMP trap. If not configured, then how we could configure. And then login banner, whether login banner is set, not set, then how we can set. And the next one is again very important option: ensure enable logon high DP or data plane load is enabled. Really very important option, right? Because if because of any reason, let's say maybe DOS or DDoS attack or misconfiguration or something, if CPU utilization hits 100%, right? So obviously we would see like degradation in the availability of services, right? But how we could get to know like whether there is high DP load? Only if this option is enabled, right? This one, enable log on high DP load. Okay, so very good feature in fact. So sustained attacks, volumetric DOS, DDoS attacks will often affect CPU utilization, and this setting will generate an event that is easily monitored for and alerted on. While setting CPU utilization watermarks in network management system is a standard practice, this setting does not depend on even having an NMS. It doesn't require anything other than standard logging to implement, right? And by default, option is not enabled. By default, disabled. So you should be aware with, right? And then we'll understand like management interface settings, how we could secure management interface of Palo Alto firewall, like by putting up some permitted IPs, disabling HTTP and Telnet because they both are not secure protocol. HTTP and Telnet means clear text, no encryption. So obviously these two protocols would be disabled, not turned on. So how we can ensure that, and then we'll understand like this option, valid certificate is set for browser based administrator interface, mainly management interface I'm concerned with, because by default if there is no interface management profile, so only the Palo Alto firewall management interface can be used for management operation, right? You cannot use like data port for management purpose. So in order to use any data port for the management operation, interface management profile need to be created and associated with interface. I hope you understand all that. And of course, I assume you know very well about Palo Alto firewall configuration, administration, basic troubleshooting, because in this section we are just going to understand best practices, right? To like keep your Palo Alto firewall secure. Okay, so we are not going to understand like about Palo Alto firewall. I assume like you already you are good in Palo Alto firewall configuration, and then understanding like password complexity option, if not enabled, then yes, you should enable that. Idle timeout, very important feature, and idle timeout should be less than or equal to 10 minutes, or even I strongly recommend keeping this value to 5 minutes only, right? Because in case if you leave your workstation or laptop or computer unattended without logging out from the Palo Alto firewall and the idle timeout is 60 minutes or more than that, then your this administrative session already you have logged in, so this could allow an unauthorized access to the firewall management interface access. So obviously this value should be ideally 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes, but not more than that. Okay, so make sure like this idle timeout value is properly configured, and then ensure verify update server identity. Make sure that this option is enabled, right? And I think by default verify update server identity is by default enabled, at least in PAN OS 10, right? But if not, then yes, make sure there is a check mark here. Ensure redundant NTP server are configured appropriately and proper NTP server. Your firewall should not be configured with any unidentified or unknown NTP server. So make sure like you have configured proper NTP server and both primary and secondary, right? Redundant NTP server. Oh, okay. So in this section we will understand all this, and in the next we will understand best practices about security policies, right, in Palo Alto firewall, in security policies, and then after decryption with the decryption policy, SSL decryption policy, about inbound, outbound, right, and also about this, what is this, certificate used for decryption is trusted, so this need to be checked. Dynamic updates, right, so antivirus update schedule, and should be 24 hours, right? Application threats and update schedule, best practices we'll understand here again. Then the next section about HA mode deployment, right, about link monitoring, path monitoring, best practices, passive link, whether prompt options would be enabled or disabled. So we will understand with a logical reasoning also, right? Security profiles, very important, because there are total 7 different security profiles in Palo Alto firewall, starting with antivirus, anti-spyware, vulnerability protection, wildfire, URL filtering, data filtering, file blocking. There are different, like total 7 security profiles. So we will understand best practices of configuring security profiles in Palo Alto firewalls, right? What action we should set to antivirus profile, whether alert, block, and as best practice, at least for IMAP and POP3, both are used in messaging servers, mailing solution, Internet Message Access Protocol, and Post Office Protocol version 3. So generally, we set action like to alert, or at least not to block, for IMAP and POP3, right? And for other protocols, actions would be set to block, but at least for IMAP and POP3, actions would be set to alert. And why it is so? Because in most of the organizations, you will find a dedicated maybe antivirus gateway or some other solution like email security solutions. So we just configure this POP3 and IMAP or email security solutions there. So it is recommended to mitigate malware found in POP3 and IMAP through a dedicated antivirus gateway. Due to the nature of POP3 and IMAP protocol, the firewall is not able to block only a single email message containing malware. Instead, the entire session would be terminated, and that's the reason. That is the reason. This is the best practice. And then we'll understand about after antivirus, anti-spyware, what action we should set. DNS sinkholing, really very important configuration in anti-spyware security profile. And if you don't understand what is DNS sinkholing, so I'll explain at that time. Because understanding DNS sinkholing is really very important, right? It's part of the DNS security. So we'll understand that. About anti-spyware, vulnerability protection is very similar to IPS, intrusion prevention system. So in Palo Alto, we don't have IPS, but exactly the same is achieved with vulnerability protection profile. We'll understand this. pan-GB URL filtering, and ensure that access to every URL is logged. How we can do that? And very important one, HTTP header logging options. What all HTTP headers should be logged, right? Like X forwarded for, XFF, right? I hope you understand this. XFF, X forwarded for, right? It's like actual source IP address is encoded inside HTTP header, and really very important if we are doing some like advanced threat monitoring or other security solutions. So yes, make sure that X forwarded for box is checked. By default unchecked. User isn't, like, right? It gives information about the browser, whether the browser is Chrome, Firefox, because some of the softwares used by hackers or attackers like Bot Suite, Fiddler. So user agent would be missing then, right? So understanding about user agent is really very important. So these 4 options, user agent, referred, X forwarded for, should be enabled. And coming to the next one is about data filtering and file blocking best practices. These are also security profiles, and really very important profile. It's not security profile, it is basically zone protection profile, different than the security profile. But creating zone protection profile and attaching or associating with security zone, and mainly security zone that that faces untrusted networks, like your outside zone, right? So there should be zone protection profile. But under zone protection profile, what all options you should enable, and enabling this flood protection, then IP security, packet based attack, ICMP, right, UDP. So we will understand all about zone protection profile best practices. Okay, and once done with that, then again URL filtering profile and wildfire, right? Wildfire security profiles, best practices. Alright, so let me start with the first one today. So I'm back to the first one, device setup. Logging to a remote host permits longer log retention than on-device logging. It is one of the reasons. Logging to external host provides a second copy of all logs, another reason. And the third reason is logging all infrastructure to a single central destination also allows the configuration of SIEM services. Let me quickly give you high-level overview understanding of SIEM, or security information and event management, the third point, right? So generally SIEM, or security information and event management solution, means forwarding logs, security events of different network devices, servers like IIS server, Apache server, Active Directory server, web application firewalls, network firewalls, load balancer, right, AD server, web server, WAF, or any other security device, right? So forwarding security events and logs to a centralized log server, or not exactly the log server, because SIEM tool is more than that, because of course there would be centralized logging and storing events, and then SIEM tool also does parsing, correlation, right? And based on rule logic, alerts are generated. So nowadays, like organizations, either they would have like on-prem security operations centers, or maybe third party or outsourced SOC, and SIEM tool is one of the important software or tool in any security operations center. SIEM tool, right? There are different vendors, like you must have heard name of like Splunk, IBM QRadar, Microsoft Sentinel, HP ArcSight. There are too many like SIEM tools available nowadays. So basically what we do, we configure network devices, firewalls, servers, Linux servers, web servers to forward their log security events to this log collector or SIEM server, or SIEM tool rather, I would say. And as I mentioned, SIEM tool is more than a log or centralized log server, because it's not only storing logs. Basically logs are passed, and on the basis of rule logic that we create, security alerts are generated, right? And even nowadays we do have like some remediation solution like SIEM plus ROR, security orchestration and automated response. So what happens if, let's say, we want to forward security events of Windows server to SIEM tool, or maybe a Linux server? So we install agent software in order to perform connectivity. That means AD server or Linux servers connected to the SIEM tool, whether SIEM tool is on-prem or cloud or hosted anywhere. So with the help of some like agent or some software, connectivity is done, because we can install agent software. But what about the firewalls like Palo Alto, a load balancer, a FortiGate, a checkpoint, or any other firewall? So not possible, right? We cannot install any agent software on that. So what we do, we configure a syslog server, and we once like syslog server is set up, any Linux based system, and then logs are forwarded to syslog server, like from Palo Alto to syslog server, and then syslog server acts as a proxy between SIEM and the firewalls and the load balancers or any other devices, and then syslog server forward those logs to the SIEM tool, and then further like log parsing, correlation, rule logic and all that stuff. I'm not going to explain everything about the SIEM tool because we want to understand like best practices about configuring Palo Alto firewall in this section. It's not about like the SIEM tool, right? So that's the point here. Like if you again let me go back, so I hope you understand like point number 3, logging to all infrastructure to a single central destination also allows the configuration of SIEM services, right? So how about manual security audit? So go to device, server profile, syslog, log settings. So let me show you practically. So navigate to device and left hand side look for server profiles. Here server profiles, right, and then syslog. So click syslog server, and if there is a syslog server already configured, that means is like all right. But in case if there is no syslog server, so how you can configure? Click add, just give any name here, right, name, and click add any name and syslog server IP address, right? So in your environment, if there is a syslog server, so just any name, syslog server IP address, transport is UDP, port number 514, right? So just name and syslog server. Already here like there is one syslog server configured, so I don't have to do much here. And once like it's done, like you have verified that yes, there is a logging is enabled, there is syslog server. So the next option is like going to under log settings, right? So here we have log settings, and under each section, whether it's system, configuration, user ID, IP tag, let me show you, user ID, HIP, host information profile, right? HIP is used in like global protect or remote access VPN for security posture of end host devices. It's a license feature. Global protect your remote access VPN, IP tag. So what next you should check for that there is system configuration or not. If not, then just create. And what you should do here, just attach or associate syslog profile, right? So first create syslog profile and then go to like system, configuration section, user ID section, and in each section make sure that syslog server is configured. Configured I mean selected here. Just make sure that in under each section, system, configuration, user ID, HIP, syslog is here selected. That's it. Easy, right? So the same option is mentioned here. Okay, and then once first is completed, then the next one is SNMP version 3 traps. So SNMP version 3 traps is again a separate configuration and really very important. And version 3, why version 3? Because version 3 supports remote configuration of SNMP entities, and it also adds both encryption and authentication, right, which can be used together or separately, making this is the most secure version yet. So there are a lot of SNMP commands, so you must be familiar with, like get next, get bulk, set command. There are different SNMP commands, but SNMP traps are different, right? Traps are unrequested notification and SNMP agent of a managed device sent to SNMP manager, right? So basically SNMP agents initiate the traps command. Okay, but what we should check for here, so under server profile, first, like there should be SNMP traps here. Under server profile, SNMP trap, and if there is no SNMP traps configured, so click here, add any name, version 3 of course, make sure that version 3 is selected, and here like give any name. SNMP manager means IP address or FQDN of the SNMP manager, and credential here. Once done, like you have successfully created SNMP trap server profile. First step, right? So first step is profile, and then go to log settings and make sure that SNMP trap is selected there under log settings. Alright, same here under log settings. So now make sure that SNMP under this SNMP traps profile created previously must be here. So syslog server is already there, and make sure that SNMP trap is also here, right? So simply select here add, and you will find in under drop down SNMP profile, select that. Repeat same for this again, configuration, and then add user ID, HIP, and IP tag, right? You'll find everything here in the PDF file. It's all mentioned here. And then third, ensure login banner is set. Login banner. So for that, go to device setup management, and then under this device setup management, gear symbol here to set the login banner, right? Click here and see here already there is one banner like warning notice, you are accessing a secure system, unauthorized use is prohibited. So just put down the message here, and in order to see like this message, let me minimize font size. So let me log in again. Just I want to show you the login message banner, and here you will see warning notice and you are accessing this, right? So username, password, and if you go to device setup one more time, and on this page there is another option here, banner and messages, right? It's a MOD or message of the day, like you can set this message of the day from here. So message of the day, welcome, anything like you want to set here. Let me correct this, and the title, message of the day, or whatever title you want to set here, you can set. Color, self-explanatory, I hope you understand, like setting up this message. So MOD is different than the login banner. So because MOD is like once we have successfully logged into the this web UI page, then message of the day is displayed, MOD, and login banner is different. So this way we can configure both, right? So as a best practice, we should configure login banner, and I will show you like message of the day also already. And then the fourth one, as I mentioned before, like enabling log on high DP load is enabled, is really very important option, right? Because enable log on high DP load feature, this would be enabled, and by default this feature is disabled, right? And when it is enabled, a system log entry is created when the device packet processing load reaches 100% utilization, right? And sustained attacks, especially volumetric denial of service or distributed denial of service attacks, will often affect CPU utilization. This setting will generate an event right, that is easily monitored for and alerted on. So really this one is very important option, and from where we can enable. So under this logging and reporting settings, and then log export. Let me show you. And before that, log out, log in again, just to see both messages. So login banner is here, warning notice, right? And what about message of the day, MOD? So message of the day was we successfully log into Web UI portal. And here we have message of the day, right? So whatever you want to type here, you can do that. All right, and go to device tab one more time, setup, logging and reporting settings, gear symbol, log exports and reporting. So by default option is disabled, so make sure that enable log on high DP load is enabled. By default you will find this option disabled, right? Next, management interface settings. So ensure permitted IP address is set to those necessary for device management, because by default anyone who knows like admin credential, username and password, and if there is IP reachability to the management interface, so yes, management using management interface Web UI pages or Palo Alto firewall can be accessed. But if you want to restrict that, then yes, we can do that, and we can specify permitted IPs, right? Where? So again, go to this device management and management interface. Here we have management interface, and this one permitted IP addresses. So you can specify management PC IP here. By default this field is blank. It means anyone who has like username and password of Palo Alto firewall, and if there is IP reachability, then yes, Web UI IPs can be accessed, but you can restrict with this permitted IP address. And also make sure that these two protocols are not enabled, because HTTP and Telnet means plain text, no encryption. So make sure that both are disabled, and by default both are disabled, so you don't have to do anything, but just make sure like if someone has enabled, then turn both options off, right? So yes, HTTP and Telnet options should be disabled, correct. Ensure valid certificates are set for browser based administrative interface, right? So basically what happens when we access Web UI page of Palo Alto firewall, you must have seen like certificate error message, self-signed certificate error message, because certificate is not trusted. I hope you understand like the about SSL certificate, certificate authorities, trusted, untrusted certificates. So I assume you are very much aware, acquainted with SSL certificates, certificate authorities, everything, because my objective is just to explain like best practices, device hardening, recommendations, right? Not getting deep dive into the concepts, core concept of TSL, SSL and all that, right? Already I have covered multiple times about SSL and digital certificate. So make sure that there is a valid certificate. Otherwise what happens if there is no valid certificate? For example, let me first show you. So see here, like when I try to access Web UI page of Palo Alto firewall, then there is error, your connection is not private, right? And why like it is so? Because if you check like SSL certificate, so it's a self-signed certificate issued by and issued to same. It means certificate is a device certificate, so issued by and issued to both are same, means a self-signed certificate. So in case if certificate is self-signed certificate, our issuing authority is not trusted authority, so browsers keep warning messages, right, that attackers might be trying to steal your information. However, I'm very much sure that there is no risk involved here because I have access Palo Alto firewall web UI page. So even in case if there is warning message, then safely I can ignore and I can go to the next, like I mean like in advance, and I can open GUI page of Palo Alto firewall, right? I can ignore the warning message, but this ignoring warning message can be harmful, right? So best practice is just to use like either proper certificate, I mean like trusted by browsers, so that we should not see any warning message, because if certificate that is self-signed, expired or otherwise invalid is used, and in this case the certificate is basically self-signed, not expired but self-signed. So but we cannot like of course now if we look at certificate, issuing authority and everything, then we might get some like valid points, okay, whether we should ignore warning message or not. But best practice is not seeing like any warning message, because sometimes what happens, if the certificate is self-signed or maybe expired or invalid, but not exactly of the device certificate, maybe some other certificate, or even if the eavesdrop session is, or there is man in middle attack, right? Man in middle, I hope you understand, like there is a device in the middle of communication stream, and device is doing some SSL decryption or certificate inspection. In that case also certificate is issued by the device in the middle, not from the target machine, right? So best practice is like configuring SSL profile and associating with this administrative interface, right? Administrative interface, that's the best practice here. And you can see here, like this is the administrative profile and under management section and general settings. So I mean like if let me show you, just hang in there. So I'm going to ignore navigate to device and then certificate management, and here like there is option like certificate, right? So import an appropriate certificate for your administrative session from trusted